Next up, then, is a story similar in tone. It's about two elderly people who fall in love when they were young, lose touch, and reconnect by the
I don't
wonders
think
of
it's
Facebook.
similar at all.
Well, it's similar in as much as it's two elderly people in love. That's I was
But
trying
they're
to
not. Yeah, and there's
see
the
this.
family,
See
dysfunctional
this.
families.
Each member of the pair has a family. So Anne Reid, Celia has upper class, well-to-do teacher Sarah Lancashire, Caroline. Then Derek Jacobi's Alan has Nicola Walker's Gillian, who lives and works on the family farm. We pick up several years on. Celia and Alan had been married for 7 years, and there's tensions beginning to show in their relationship. Alan's brother Ted, played by Timothy West, is coming over to stay with them. They've since moved away from Caroline, and they've got their own massive bungalow. Caroline's working for a different school. Gillian's still on the farm. That is Last Tango in Halifax. This is the 5th series now. We haven't seen this since Christmas of
I know.
2016.
I was trying to work out when it was. You see, in my brain, there was 3 full series, wasn't there? And then there was that weird Christmas special about
Weird,
ghosts and a play.
and
I remember us not particularly liking those Christmas specials.
it was just a bit odd.
And was that how when they wrote sort of Dean Andrews out of it, and they finally said that she'd killed her husband?
Yeah. Tonally, it was completely different to what had come before.
Whereas this is, I would say, a return to form.
I love this.
I think I know exactly what Luke's going to say. He's going to say realistic dialogue, characters you can warm to, believable situations.
Yes.
Apart from the Tony Gardner, Ronnie Ancona stuff, which you absolutely hated.
I always forget about them as well, and then they pop back up and I'm like, oh god, why do you have to? Yeah. But
The overtly sort of comic stuff in those scenes. She's this sort of massive author now, the Ronnie Ancona's Judith, and this woman from the publishers is living with them, so she should stop her drinking and things like that. And that all felt totally clunky. But I think the stuff in this with Alan applying for a job at a supermarket. And all these arguments about money and things like that seemed completely, they've got Woodworm in the farmhouse, Raf's training as a teacher now, and
I thought that was good. I didn't expect that.
Yeah,
that was really good.
A second child and things like that. So all of that stuff was really good, and just the dial, like there was a line where Celia said, oh, Eggheads is starting, I need to end this conversation, things like that. It is just, warm and comforting, and as Luke would say, human drama. I'll get that in there as well.
Thanks for stealing all my...
I did have a question for you, though, because this is the sort of drama where you go, why can't we make more things like this, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Would you not get bored if everything was like this, though? Do you not need that variety?
Give me an example of something that isn't like it, then.
I mean,
because Utopia is about as far removed from this as you can get, and though I still, for me,
something like The Capture, which was a thriller last year. That was something different, like a sort of a thriller element where it's more about the story than the characters. You struggled.
It just felt hollow. Just felt hollow to me. That
is about the plot first and the characters second. You need characters first, but would you not get bored if it was all that? Because I feel like I like a variety of different things.
Because say like the end of the effing world, I really like those characters, and I will go on the journey as bonkers and ridiculous as it gets because I really like those too. So it doesn't mean that the world always has to feel completely authentic. It just means that I like to latch on to people.
You struggle with a lot of thrillers and things like that. You struggle with getting on board with things like that, and I think if everything was like this, though, it would be the other way around for you, I think. But there you go.
I feel like everything used to be like this, which is why I'm so obsessive, and now there is a turn to let's do these big budget, somewhat hollow, in my opinion, dramas.
It has gone. I do agree with you to an extent. It has become more homogenous. There is the look to, can we sell this to other countries? Let's do these big budget things, and it has become more of a monetary thing. But I do think there were some things last year that you sort of maybe dismissed because you used the phrase "I like human dramas." this, I mean, it's great to have these characters back. You know, it's a great sort of, like Cold Feet, I suppose, isn't it? It's like putting on that sort of cozy pair of slippers.
It's cozy, but again, it's not cozy. It's
No,
got an edge to it
it's
and a
got
darkness to it.
it's got conflict. I suppose you did have those dark elements with, you know, like the murder and stuff like that, but it's more sort of conflict and believable arguments about money. And I like how Caroline sometimes as well is sort of quite dismissive of her mum and saying,
Yeah,
like, you know, I feel like Alan might prove the day that.
Yeah, I loved all that. People like getting on the bus. What people? Who likes getting on a bus? It's all brilliant. I thought it was all brilliant. She is particularly a highlight for me, Anne Reid. I just think anything Sally Wainwright gives her, she just reads the hell out of it. And
Only 4 of these, though.
I know it worries me slightly because obviously those 2 didn't quite work, and I'm hoping there is enough story in 4.
I think, obviously, if she's got an idea for a story and doesn't think it would reach, you know, it would stretch. I think this feels very much like there are different, you know, elements of the story that are all going to sort of play out over the, you know, and I think maybe we've introduced everything we are going to introduce. We're not going to sort of include any more in here, and it is very conversational, the dialogue, I think, which we both appreciate. And apart from, you know, the Judith and John scenes, everything else, I think, does ring true.
Okay, Last Tango in Halifax. For the next 4 Sundays, and I know I shouldn't bring Matt into this, I always say, does scheduling matter, blah, blah, blah. I think Sunday nights, after Call the Midwife or Antiques Roadshow or whatever it is, perfect place for this. It's never been on Sunday nights before, and I think it's the right place. Sunday nights, 9 o'clock, BBC One. I was worried, sort of, because this was 4... And I think by the end of episode 3, not a lot had happened, and I was thinking, you know, what was the overall point of this series, really? And then that finale, I thought, was so joyous and so lovely.
That everything together, didn't it?
Yeah,
all the
just
plot points.
And to be fair, there weren't that many. There wasn't a great deal of action going on. I think Last Tango has danced between light and shade brilliantly over the years, but this series did it more delicately. It was funnier than previous series have been. It was lighter than previous series has been, but I think the final episode, assuming that is the end, I think it was an absolutely joyous 60 minutes of drama. I loved it.
I think the thing is with this is that it's sort of the smaller things, which is what we said when we talked about the first episode, the underlying themes of Alan and Celia being very different characters coming together because of the sort of the nostalgia of them not seeing each other for 60 years. And there's the big thing that Brexit sort of divided them a little bit, and Alan wanting to get this job in the supermarket, Celia wanting to get this kitchen built, the animosity about not giving the money to Gillian for upkeep of the farm. It was all sort of very sort of human stories. Caroline's relationship with the colleague who didn't know she was gay, and all that. That was the only bit that didn't work for me, when you sort of saw her with her ex-partner and putting beer into his car.
It didn't really go anywhere, did it? That really.
Yeah, like. It was almost like, you know, we have to keep our character pure, so this woman who sort of rebuffed her advances and has been very harsh to her is actually a bit of a psychopath. And the thing with the giraffe on the barn as well didn't really work for me. Or Ronnie Ancona deciding she was in love with Sarah Lancashire. But I think the interplay between, you know, not only the four main, but I mean, Timothy West was excellent here as Ted, coming back from New Zealand under the premise that he had all this money and his children wanted to take it from him, and then it turned out he was the victim of a con artist that he met on a dating site, and he wanted to come back to sort of almost make amends to his late wife. He was suffering with dementia a little bit, and then there was the story with the young lad as well, who sort of Alan befriended, who ended up living in his shed. I was a bit thingy that he managed to drive all the way to Bridlington.
Yeah, I sort of let that go.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go a little bit of dramatic license when it comes to Last Tango, but I think the warmth and the authenticity of the performances. Nicola Walker's arc in this was very believable. Sort of, do I want to keep working at a job where I'm sort of running at a loss. There was a scene with the sheep going astray and losing quite a lot of the sheep. Them eating like a cannabis plant. So, but I think I think the scenes I really gravitate towards are the ones where it's Nicola Walker and Sarah Lancashire. I think those.
Yeah, they just have such a chemistry between them, don't they? And if you
Gillian,
remember where they started as well,
yeah.
to get to that point
Well,
now,
they
where
did reference it, didn't they?
Yeah.
The trailer trash line that she. But Gillian's thing about taking her to Hebden Women's Disco, that seemed to be a.
Yeah, I loved all of
They
that.
finally got to, and it's just the little sort of intricacies of the dialogue, the way they use the word "little" every so, get yourself a little flat, but he'll buy himself a little house somewhere. They just keep using that all the time, don't they? Like this sort of quaint ideal of Ted buying, he's going to buy himself a little house.
Yeah, but I think it's rare nowadays to have that connection with characters, because things are one and done a lot of the times, and we've been allowed into these people's lives since the end of 2012, and we've not been with them every year because of the busyness of Sally Wainwright and the other members of the cast, but it's nice just to pop in on them. And there's a final sort of scene between Anne Reid and Derek Jacobi's character, Celia and Alan, where they put the worlds to right and they talk about how they've been together for this long. They've not fallen out of love, but they've realised they're very different people. And it's just, the dialogue in that is why the me from 2012 loved British drama so much. Because when we use ordinary people and ordinary characters and have them have the sort of conversations you can imagine people having, I think we do it better than almost anyone. And I think those characters exemplify why I love British drama so much when it's this good, because that final scene is so good, and they bicker, but there's love there. They sort of put the worlds to rights. It's a very quiet scene. It's just them in an empty church, and I loved all the bits where Celia was saying, I like nice things, and Alan says, yeah, but nice things, they don't have to cost a lot of money. You're quite materialistic. It just was so naturalistic as well. And just cemented my affection for the show.
Those lines about, Caroline saying things like, I look at him sometimes and I just think he regrets meeting her again. And and I just think, they know these characters so well at this point. I think I would like another series, and they have left the door open nicely. But we'll just have to see. As you say, Nicola Walker and Sarah Lancashire especially are always very busy. So, and I think it's both of the characters they play here are sort of totally different from others that you've seen them portray as well, which sort of just demonstrates how great they both are.
It just, between them particularly, it just seems effortless. It's just like two friends having a conversation. And I love that sequence where she's dropping the girls off at school and they're talking through a car window. It's brilliantly natural. Last Tango in Halifax. The whole thing from 1 to 5 is on the iPlayer now. If you've never seen it, we'll spoil the end. But
question mark.
Well worth your investment, and it will be a welcome distraction from what's going on at the moment. Really warm characters you can really gravitate towards and hang on to. Every time Tony Gardner and Ronnie Ancona turn up, I do sort of
and the son of
the son this time. I liked him normally, but I feel like the whole thing with the New Zealand backpackers didn't really go anywhere. There's a lot of loose threads, but in the end it all sort of held together. It was almost like they forgot bits when they got to the end, but for me it's always been about the core four, and I think they've been really interesting.